Hi, today we're going to have an intermediate lesson on the song 同桌的你. And this song came out in 1994 and its impact on the culture has been massive, and for a very good reason. It was also the name of a film in 2014 which is based on the song, and the lyrics appear in full in the recent work of one of China's best known novelists, Yan Lianke, Heart Sutra. So a full translation of the lyrics happens to appear in this translated novel, so we'll take a look at that later. And I think the reason why this song has been so impactful culturally is because the experience described in it is so universal. So 同桌的你, so 同桌, so 同学 means classmate, 同事 means colleague, as 桌子 meaning table, so 同桌 is deskmate, the person you sit next to at your desk at school. And I think it's so universal because everybody growing up had this experience. The person they sat next to, they were with them every day but didn't necessarily learn much about them and were probably too shy to get to know them properly. So it's about looking back as an adult on the person who was your 同桌. So we'll get straight into the lyrics. I'll read the first verse. We'll go through the lyrics verse by verse and break down the vocabulary and have a really good understanding of how this song works, and by the end you'll be able to smash this song at karaoke. The first line, 明天你是否会想起? So, 明天你是否会想起? 明天你是否会想起? So as an intermediate, the one word that you might not quite be familiar with is 否, and 否 appears much more in written Chinese than in spoken Chinese, and it is a negation, very similar to 不. So, 明天你是否会想起? Tomorrow, will you remember? 明天你是否会想起? 昨天你写的日记? So, the diary entry that you wrote yesterday. So, 日记 meaning diary, and 昨天 meaning yesterday. So, tomorrow, will you remember the diary entry you wrote yesterday? 明天你是否会想起昨天你写的日记? So let's see how the novel Heart Sutra translates it. Tomorrow, will you still recall the diary you wrote yesterday? Sounds about right. So it's the closest thing that exists to an official translation. Next line, 明天你是否还惦记曾经最爱哭的你? So tomorrow, will you still, so 惦记 is to remember, but it's a much more lyrical way of use. So the word for remember is usually 记得. So 惦记 is to think about while also being to remember. So it's a much more lyrical way of saying to remember. 明天你是否还惦记曾经最爱哭的你? So 曾经 again appears much more in lyrical Chinese than in everyday conversational Chinese. So 曾经 is once or once upon a time. 曾经最爱哭的你. So the first verse, 明天你是否会想起昨天你写的日记? 明天你是否还惦记曾经最爱哭的你? So official translation of the first verse is, tomorrow will you still recall the diary you wrote yesterday? Tomorrow will you still recall the you who used to love to cry? So, or the version of yourself that loved to cry a lot. 明天你是否会想起昨天你写的日记? 明天你是否还惦记曾经最爱哭的你? Next verse, 老师们都已想不起. So 老师 teacher, 老师们 the plural of teacher, so teachers. 都已想不起. So 想起 meaning to remember, 想不起 to be unable to remember. The teachers are all already unable to remember. 猜不出问题的你. So 猜 to guess, 问题 question or problem. So the you who could not guess the answers to questions. So 老师们都已想不起猜不出问题的你. 老师们都已想不起猜不出问题的你. So translation will be, The teachers already don't remember. The you who couldn't guess the correct answer. 我也是偶然翻相片. So myself, so I also, so 偶然 fan to turn, 相片, so I also, while happening to turn over a photograph, 相片. 才想起同桌的你. Only then recall 同桌的你, the title of the song, you who was my desk mate. So the teachers already don't remember the you who couldn't answer the questions, and I, only until I happened to look at a photograph did I remember you. The teachers already don't remember the you who couldn't guess the correct answer. I also occasionally look through old photographs, and only then do I remember you, my desk mate. So in this context, oūrán means occasionally. So next verse. 谁娶了duōchóushàngân的你谁看了你的日记 So 娶 is to marry. So 娶 is to marry from a male point of view. So slight aside. So 结婚 is to get married. For a man to marry a woman, the verb is 娶 from the man's point of view. And when a woman marries a man, she 嫁给我, so 嫁给他. So the man is taking, the woman is giving. It's a language that really wears its sexism on its sleeve. Credit where it's due. So who married duōchóushàngân is in the dictionary as sentimental or overly sensitive. 谁娶了duōchóushàngân的你谁娶了duōchóushàngân的你谁看了你的日记 So 谁娶了duōchóushàngân的你 So who married overly sensitive you or sentimental you? 谁看了你的日记 Who saw your diary? Who read your diary? 谁把你的长发盘起 So 长发 long hair, 盘起 so pan as in pan is to coil up. So who I don't even know the terminology in English for hairdressing, but who coiled up your long hair? So who arranged your long hair into a bun? 谁给你做的嫁衣 Like I said, 娶 is to marry from a man's point of view. 嫁 is to marry from a woman's point of view. So 嫁衣 is wedding clothes or wedding dress. So who made your wedding clothes? The author, the narrator of the song is speculating. Who married overly sensitive you? Who saw your diaries? Who did your hair up? And who made your wedding dress? The official translation from this book is, who married the sentimental you? Who read your diary? Who braided your long hair? Who sewed your wedding gown? It's a good translation. Next verse. Still 5 verses to go. 你从前总是很小心 So 从前 So 以前 is before, 从前 is way back when. 你从前总是很小心 So back then you were always very careful. 问我借半块橡皮 So let's break this down. So 问我 to ask me, 借 to borrow. 半块 So 半 is half. 块 in this context is a measure word, and xiāngpí is eraser or rubber, the thing you use to rub out pencil markings. So back then you were always very careful about asking me to borrow half of an eraser, half of a rubber. 我也曾 So 曾 we've already met 曾 above as in once upon a time. So again, much more common in lyrical Chinese than spoken Chinese. 无意中 特意 is deliberately. 无意 is accidentally or unintentionally. 中说起 So 我也曾无意中说起你也曾无意中说起你也曾无意中说起 So 无意 unintentionally as opposed to 特意 deliberately. 说起 so to mention 喜欢和我在一起. So you also once unintentionally mentioned that you like being with me. So it's interesting in that, remember what you were like when you were that age. You weren't always keen to express your feelings because it might be construed as weakness. 你也曾无意中说起喜欢和我在一起. So the verse, 你从前总是很小心问我借半块橡皮，你也曾无意中说起喜欢和我在一起. So, the official translation from this book. You have always been very careful when asking me if you could borrow half an eraser. You even inadvertently said that you liked being with me. Next verse. 那时候天总是很蓝. Back then, the sky was always blue. Doesn't it sometimes seem like that way when you're looking back at the old days? Not for me, because I thought the old days were sucked, but that's just me. 那时候天总是很蓝. Back then, the sky was always blue. 日子总过得太慢. And the days passed too slowly. 日子总过得太慢. So, of course, 一天 is a day. 日子 is the days, as in the old days. 你总说毕业遥遥无期. So you always said 毕业 meaning graduation. So 遥遥无期 is not a common expression in its own right. So 遥遥 so means distant and unfathomably far away, and 无期 endlessly. So 你总说毕业遥遥无期，转眼 so in the blink of an eye 就各奔东西. So, in the blink of an eye, 各奔, again, not a common expression in its own right, but here it means to go their separate ways. So let's practice the verse together. 那时候天总是很蓝，日子总过得太慢。你总说毕业遥遥无期，转眼就各奔东西. The official translation of this past verse just gone is, at that time the sky was always blue, the days always passed too slowly. And you always said that graduation was in the distant future, but in the blink of an eye we each went our separate ways. The next three verses involve quite a bit of repetition of the vocabulary from the previous verses. Next verse. 谁遇到duōchóushàngân的你? duōchóushàngân, sentimental you, or overly sensitive you. So who encountered overly sensitive you? 谁安慰爱哭的你? So 安慰 is to comfort, as in to console someone. So, and 爱哭, so you love to cry. The version of you who loved to cry. So 谁安慰爱哭的你? 谁看了我给你写的信? 谁把它丢在风里? So who saw the letter I sent you, and who threw it away in the wind, or who lost it in the wind. So it's how it feels about youthful correspondences. 谁遇到duōchóushàngân的你? 谁安慰爱哭的你? 谁看了我给你写的信? 谁把它丢在风里? Who encountered sentimental you? Who comforted you when you loved to cry? Who saw the letter I wrote to you, and who lost it in the wind? Next verse. 从前的日子都远去. The old days are all long gone. Straightforward vocabulary for an intermediate. 我也将有我的妻. So, 将 as in will or in the future. 妻子 so wife. So, 我也将有我的妻. I will also have my wife. Apparently not yet. 我也会给她看相片. I will also give her a look at photographs. 给她讲同桌的你 and mention you, my 同桌, my table mate, to her. Which, mentioning your teenage crushes seems like a fast track to a divorce, but I could be wrong. The whole verse. 从前的日子都远去，我也将有我的妻，我也会给她看相片， 给他讲同桌的你. Straightforward stuff, especially that the vocab is all repeated from earlier verses. And the very last verse is simply a repetition of the third verse. So, 谁去了多愁善感的你，谁安慰爱哭的你，谁把你的长发盘起，谁给你做的嫁衣. Who married sentimental you? Who comforted you when you cried? And who did up your hair? And who sewed your wedding gown? So straightforward stuff. It's a great song, and I think there's a reason why this 30-year-old song has had such a massive cultural impact, because the experience is so universal in that when you're sitting 70 kids to a class, your teachers probably aren't going to remember you much, and you might not remember each other that much, but there will always be a few who really leave a lasting impression. And that's why 同桌的你 is a song of the China experience. Enjoy. Let me know in the comments if you found this helpful, and hopefully you'll be smashing this at karaoke sooner rather than later.